Okay, I think I finally found an angle that's gonna work. So, yippee. I trekked like 20 minutes to get here out in like the middle of nowhere. Like, I am literally in the boonies, and just to talk about books. So, yippee. These are a bunch of books that I read this summer. Firekeeper's Daughter, Rosewater, Parable of the Talents, Be Gay, Do Crime, Cemetery Boys, This Is How You Lose a Time War, and Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. So basically all YA. But I wanted to talk about them, and yeah, why not? Okay, so Aristotle and Dante, I have some notes. By Benjamin Alile Sahins. I'm probably butchering that. I am so sorry. I'm just gonna kind of read, or you know what? I'll just read this blurb on the back. Dante can't swim. Ari can't. Dante is articulate and self-assured. Ari has a hard time with words and suffers from self-doubt. Dante gets lost in poetry and art. Ari gets lost in the thoughts of his older brother who is in prison. Dante is fair-skinned. Ari's features are much darker. It seems that a boy like Dante, with his open and unique perspective on life, would be the last person to break down the walls that Ari has built around himself. But against all odds, when Ari and Dante meet, they develop a special bond that will teach them the most important truths of their lives and help define the people they want to be. But there are big hurdles in the way, and only by believing in each other and the power of their friendship can Ari and Dante emerge stronger on the other side. So this was my second time reading this masterpiece. Actually, the first time was like 2 years ago, and I think I just thought the dialogue was kind of clipped and the characters are kind of meh. I don't think I related to the characters as much then. But this time, I think I kind of fell in love with Ari and Dante and how like awkward they are. The way they joke and talk is like really blunt, and it kind of taught me that like there doesn't have to be a lot of like flowery language and complex jokes, because like a lot of the books that like I was reading at the time or before this were like really flowery, like drawn out books with a lot of dialogue and like pretentious like descriptions, and this just is cut to the crap, like no nonsense. Amazing. I loved it. I guess like the scenes where they just like talk under the stars is just like it hits. I love it so much. It was a lot better the second time I read it. If you can't tell, I could talk about this book for hours. Just the way that they flow and the way they discover like each other, and the way like hit after hit like Dante does. I'm not gonna, no spoilers, but the way Dante does all of this for Ari is just chef's kiss. Love this book. Oh, and stars, I rated it 4.5 out of 5 stars this time. So, yeah. Sorry, yeah. Oh, I should probably do a disclaimer. So, no spoilers. I'm doing this all in one take. Okay, so around the time that I was reading Ari and Dante, This Is How You Lose Time War, and a few other books, I was commuting to a camp, and basically I had to take like public transit for like 2-3 hours like every day. It was like kind of intense, so I would like be on like public transit, like, and all I had time to do was to like read books. So most of these are books as I was commuting to camp. This Is How You Lose a Time War. Okay, I heard a lot about this. The TikTok lesbians, the book talk lesbians got me into this. I heard a lot about this book going into it. Like, I've seen the fan art. I've seen people be like, this book is amazing, like red and blue. It's just like breathtaking, painstakingly, beautifully crafted, blah, blah, blah. I had really high expectations for this book, like going into it. I think it's just a thing that I talked about with too flowery language. Red talks about kind of the abstract concept of eating. It's gross, isn't it? In the abstract, I mean. When you're used to hyperspace recharging stations, to sunlight and cosmic rays, when most of the beauty you've known lies in the great machine's heart, It's hard to see the appeal of using bones that poke from spit-coated gums to mash things that grew in dirt into a paste that will fit down the wet tube connecting your mouth into the sac of acid under your heart. It takes the new recruits a long time to get used to once they're decanted. Like, it had really pretentious, like, drawn-out language. The writing style almost, like, reminded me of, like, John Green a little bit. How, like, they're like traveling through time and like a lot of the dialogue and stuff. It was just the language for me, and I felt, not to spoil, but the ending was one of those really slow burn books. I feel like we have so much of that in like sapphic media. It got good at the end. It reminded me of the Song of Achilles, but I feel like it could have got straight to the point sooner, so I rated it 2.5 stars. Okay, oh, and I realized I forgot to read the blurb for the last book. So, Cemetery Boys by Aidan Thomas. When a traditional Latinx family has problems accepting his gender, Yadriel becomes determined to prove himself a real brujo. With the help of his cousin and best friend Maritzia, he performs a quinces ritual himself, and then sets out to find the ghost of his murdered cousin, Miguel, and set it free. However, the ghost he summons is actually Julian Diaz, the school's resident bad boy, and Julian is not about to go quietly into death. He is determined to find out what happened and tie up some loose ends before he leaves. Left with no choice, Yadriel agrees to help Julian so they can both get what they want. The longer Yadriel spends with Julian, the less he wants to let him leave. This is just my personal opinion, of course, but I had mixed feelings about this book. I read the blurb and I was like, wait, trans, like, T-boy Latinx family, like, we do not get enough like POC trans reps, so I was like, this is beautiful, like, I need this. But I think I was like 20 pages in, and it was one of those books where it's just like, this is too much YA. Like, it felt like I was seeing like two like Adventure Time characters, two like Disney Channel characters, like talk to each other and go on an adventure. When it categorizes the concept of being trans, or when it like has a minority and it feels like it's capitalizing on that, like, it felt very, oh, I'm trans and no one in my community is like gonna accept me. Like, it felt like one of those books, and I think that's what really irked me. Let me see if I can find a quote. Okay, on page 13, it was like, being transgender and gay had earned Yadriel the title of head black sheep among the Brooks. Though, in truth, being gay had already been easier for them to accept, but only because they saw Yadriel as liking boys but still being heterosexual. And then it goes on to his friend Maritzia. It's talking about how she was being excluded from their team. What I was saying is, like, with those quotes, it just felt like they were trying to make these characters different and have quirks, but the only quirks they seemed to have were the fact that they were trans or vegan. And I think that just irked me because I'm kind of put off by characters like that. But to anyone who has read all of Cemetery Boys, and I do love YA, if you actually liked it, let me know, and I'll try to finish it, because this did not finish for me. 1 star, unfortunately. Okay, and then this I got at I think Pegasus Books in Berkeley. It was one of those really cute little like bookstores, and it's 16 queer short stories with the concept of doing crime, and I was really intrigued. I was like, well, this is be gay, do crime. So I'm just gonna talk about the first story because I didn't finish all of this, but I really like the first story, The Meaning of Life by Mariam LaCroix, I think. It's about like this lesbian couple that just kind of like, they kidnapped this baby in an alley. And they basically raise this baby, and as they're raising this baby, they talk about like the meaning of life as they're like hiding this baby from its like birth parents, and they're just like, oh, here's a baby, like, might as well raise it now. I love the concept so much, and the dialogue in this first story, like, it felt really surrealist in a good way. I'm trying to find a quote. Scene where, actually, I'm not gonna spoil. I'm just gonna say the dialogue in this first story was amazing. I really want to read more of Miriam LaCroix because I really liked. I think there's a full book that she wrote after this, like expanding on the short stories. So I definitely want to look into that. And they're just, lesbians are so accepting. What can go wrong with lesbians doing crime? Okay. Oh boy, this is a meaty one. I am definitely not the most qualified to give an opinion on this. This is a really chunky book, if you can't already tell. And Octavia Butler is a genius. I cannot be critiquing her work. I do not have the qualifications for that. But anyways, I was recommended this by a peer of mine, and this is, if you can't tell already, Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler. If you haven't heard about it already and you've been living under a rock. I was intrigued to this because I heard about this book having a president with the slogan, "Make America Great Again," cough cough. And I was like, whoa, like, that's really cool. I need to read it. Yeah, I was blown away by this, honestly. I mean, I thought this was going to be one of those, like, really, like, pretentious language, like, political commentary pieces. But the character development was amazing. If you can't tell, I read for characters. I'm a little guy that reads for characters. Oh, yeah, okay, so the thing I was saying about commuting, I was commuting on public transit, right? I was on the bus and the train, and I was reading this, and I kid you not, one day, these, like, train officers came on board as I was reading this, like, dystopian book about an authoritarian government, as, like, police officers were coming on the train, and I was scared shitless. If you can't tell why, let me just read you the blurb. In 2032, Lauren Olamina has survived the destruction of her home and family and created a peaceful community in Northern California based on her newly founded faith, Earthseed. The fledgling group provides refuge for outcasts facing persecution after the election of an ultra-conservative president who vows to make America great again. Cough, cough. In an increasingly divided and outrageous nation, Lauren's subversive colony, a minority religious faction led by a black woman, becomes target for President Jarrett's reign of terror and oppression. Years later, Asha Vera reads the journals of a mother she never knew, Lauren Olamina. As she searches for answers about her own past, she also struggles to reconcile with the legacy of a mother caught between her duty to her chosen family and calling to lead humankind to a better future. I'm just gonna say, no spoilers, I would have joined Earthseed. It's one of those books where, humanity has, it's like this post-apocalyptic world, where Lauren is creating Earthseed, like this kind of hippie, like, community in Northern California. I've heard so much about this book from a lens of this is our current political climate, and this is such a reflection of it, and I've heard about this, obviously, as a warning to our current society, blah blah blah, and there are so many aspects of this book that I loved. Lauren we don't get, obviously, a lot of dystopian from the perspective of a black woman, and her journals of, like, a young woman trying to figure herself out, her own identity, while also creating this huge community, Earthseed. And basically her plan is to skip to this for spoilers, but plan to save humankind, and all while, like, trying to have a baby of her own and trying to navigate relationships with her husband and all the people in her community, and also living in this crazy world where everyone is so cutthroat and it's become this, like, authoritarian shithole. I love that so much. We don't get enough representation from the perspective of a black woman, And oh yeah, there were a lot of aspects I liked, like there's this concept of sharers, of people who basically like genetically are more empathetic, but it's not a good thing. It's they're a target to all the violence more, because feel everything 10 times more. And Lauren's a sharer. She wants to hide that from everyone. Sharing is a vulnerability, and I like how Butler like executes that theme of like vulnerability so much. It was so beautiful. I need to read this again and like really analyze it. I probably will for a class. But I loved the like these quotes, because she skipped to this again. Lauren basically made this like Bible for Earthseed, and there's like these quotes. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but quotes from the book, which kind of divided it up so it's a lot like easier and more digestible to read. Also, the time period. Can I just talk about that? It's in 2033. That is 8 years from now. That's so crazy. And yeah, I'm just a sucker for books in diary format. And the way that any books that like time skip in a diary format, I am such a sucker for. And the way it like changed to the POV of her daughter at the end, and all these different POVs, just I love this book. Parable of the Talents. Okay, 4 stars. Yeah, I loved it. Okay, Rosewater by Liv Little. This is a black sapphic romance. Again, we don't get enough of these. Just chef's kiss, honestly. Let me read the blurb. Elsie is a sexy, funny, and fiercely independent woman in South London, but at just 28, she is also tired. Though she spends her days writing tender poetry in her journal, her nights are spent working long hours for minimum wage at a neighborhood dive bar. Not even sleeping with her alluring coworker, Bea, can quell her existential dread. The struggle of being estranged from her family and the fear of never making money doing what she loves is too great. Still, Elsie is determined to keep the faith, for a little longer at least. Things will surely turn around. They have to. But when Elsie is suddenly evicted from her social housing, her fragile foundation threatens to collapse entirely. With nowhere else to go, she turns to her childhood friend, Juliet, for help. As the days at Juliet's turn into weeks and then months, Elsie finds herself finally able to breathe. But between the reruns of Drag Race and nights smoking on the balcony, it is not long before something else unexpected and totally undeniable begins to glimmer in Elsie's heart. Oh my god, okay. Can I just say the dialogue in this was, oh my god, scrumptious. I am such a sucker for a good British romance. Like, I devoured Heartstopper as a kid, so this just felt like a kiss on the cheek. I feel like you could feel the love like radiating through this book. The love they have for each other, first as friends and then moving into something more, is like, I mean, every romance book, but this just hit me in the heart. So basically Elsie is this poet, right? Writing tender poetry, and you kind of get to see her more through her poetry, and as she talks about her childhood with strict Guyanese immigrant parents, and how she's become and formed into the person she is today. I love books that dive into childhood. I love books that like go back in time to show character development, and this did all of that. It was one of those books where Elsie felt like a bitch in the beginning. Like, you know, first page she's getting evicted and she's like kind of being a bitch to the people who she's staying with, who she's roommates with. Oh my god, the word. But you get to see her more, and I just love how you can see her character development, how you can struggling as an artist. I feel like I've read many books on love addiction or anxious attachment and anxious codependency. I think is the word I'm looking for. I feel like I've read a lot of books on codependency. And yeah, this book just clicked all the boxes. I really want to read some clips of dialogue. Hold on. Okay, sorry. On page 120, without spoiling, where Juliet and Elsie are talking about Juliet's mom. How's Helen, by the way? You never talk about her, Elsie. She's Helen. Juliet says this while letting out a sigh. I don't know why Juliet gets so exasperated by her mom. If I had a parent as uninterested in rules and tradition, I'd be lapping it up. What does that mean exactly? It means she's fine. She just continues to do what Helen does. You know she's a handful. A fatigued look takes over Juliet's face. I move over to where she's standing in the kitchen and place my right hand on her sympathetically. For some reason, I start to pat her on the shoulder in the way I imagine blokes do in the club when they meet up and complain about their missus. What is that? She turns to my hand, which remains even though it's now still. I don't know. I just thought you looked stressed talking about her. I remove my hand and quickly retreat to the other side of the kitchen so that there's sufficient distance between us again. Okay, tension and just the easy friendship they have with each other as they're like, in this little confined space in Juliet's apartment, and they slowly are inched closer and closer together. Just their dynamics. Enough said. I loved Rosewater. Highly recommend it. 5 stars. 5 stars. Just black sapphic fluff, because we don't get enough of that. Angsty fluff, I should say. Okay, sorry. This video is getting close to 30 minutes. And I don't think I have time for Firekeeper's Daughter. I'll probably do that in a next month all reads video. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you want any more really anxious book reviews, let me know. I kind of just did this on a whim, and I have no idea why I'm doing this in the middle of absolute nowhere, but let me know if you liked it. Alright, see you.